I married the most dangerous man in Africa. When people found out, it shook the whole underground world. I was a broke Ugandan college girl, my family deep in poverty. One day, somehow, I met a billionaire South African arms dealer tied to the mafia. He was the man everyone feared, and against all odds, I fell in love with him. Now we were getting married. This was part 7. If you're new here, start from the beginning. That day, I was pacing in my small room, back and forth, until even the wooden floor seemed tired of me. The ceiling fan above just spun uselessly, pushing warm air around while sweat ran down my back. I gripped my phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Thabo was on the other side of that screen. South Africa. A place I had never stepped foot in. I only knew it through our video calls. Wide, clean roads behind him, tall buildings, people passing and speaking with an accent so far from Kampala, it sometimes made my chest ache. And him, he was calm. Always calm. The kind of calm that scared you more than shouting ever could. Like if the world exploded, he would simply straighten his shirt and continue speaking. My stomach was turning over itself, fear mixed with that sick feeling that made me think I might vomit. I kept glancing at the paper on my bed, the list I had written the night before. Doctors, contacts, clinic names, all written in shaky handwriting that didn't even look like mine. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Okay, I whispered to myself. Just say it. No, wait. Breathe, AMINA. I took a step back, then another. My throat felt dry and rough, like I had swallowed dust. I could hear everything. The couple next door arguing, shoes squeaking in the corridor, a boda revving somewhere below. Every sound made my heart jump. Then I stopped. Completely. Planted my feet on the floor. Sweat was running down my palms, smearing the phone screen. Thabo, I said, my voice barely holding. I'm pregnant. Silence. The heavy kind. The kind that presses on your chest until breathing feels like work. Then he nodded, slowly, carefully. His shoulders didn't tense. His face didn't change. Okay, he said. We'll handle this. First, doctors and plans. I'll take care of everything. That was it. No anger, no accusations, no asking how it happened. Just acceptance. I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. Relief came first. Warm, soft, like someone had wrapped a thin blanket around my shoulders. But then something else followed quietly after it. Because calm didn't mean close, did it? My fingers kept twisting together. I pulled at my hair without noticing. I started pacing again, slower this time, like I was trying to teach my body that this was real, that he wouldn't vanish, that his calm meant he would actually act. But the distance between us felt like a wall I could never climb. South Africa to Uganda. Miles. Hours screens. He was there, yes, but not here. Not in the way I needed. I glanced at my notebook again. Doctor numbers. Antenatal appointments. I whispered them under my breath like a prayer. Like if I repeated them enough times, I might feel some control. Okay, I told myself quietly. We'll handle this. For just a moment, I allowed myself to imagine the baby. Small. New. Impossible. And then it hit me. He was taking responsibility, yes, but I was still alone in this. On the screen, he smiled slightly, just enough to say, I'm here, AMINA. But his eyes didn't really meet mine, not fully. And that's when I understood it clearly. He was calm, capable, steady, and I was still alone. By evening, the sunlight had gone dull. I was staring at the screen again. Thabo's office was so neat it almost hurt my eyes. Everything in its place. Everything controlled. He sat there with his hands folded on the desk, eyes steady on me. Calm, competent, distant. I scrolled through my notes, pretending it helped. Doctor contacts, phone numbers, bus fare calculations. The tight budget I had tried to work out at 5 a.m. when sleep refused to come. My fingers tapped the table. My lips pressed together. My stomach twisted itself into knots. When is your next checkup? He asked, his voice flat and even. Do you have money? I can pay if needed. I hesitated. Did I tell him about the nausea? About how dizzy I felt that morning? Did I let him see how weak I actually felt? I think I'm okay for now, I said. My voice came out soft. Careful. Too careful. He nodded once, that same faint smile, the one that didn't reach his eyes but said, you're managing. And God, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to hold on to that feeling with both hands. I twisted the laptop cord around my fingers. My leg bounced uncontrollably. I paced a little, even though moving didn't loosen the tight coil of fear sitting in my chest. He was calm, too calm. I almost said it out loud. like nothing had really changed. Was this what I had expected? I could feel the tether in the silence between our words. He was there, listening, paying attention, arranging things, planning my life from far away. But warmth, nearness, that wasn't crossing the screen. And I realized I had never truly expected it. I couldn't have. I can do this, I told myself, because someone had to say it. Because if I broke, there was no one sitting beside me. No hand on my shoulder. No soft voice telling me it would be okay. Only instructions. Practical, calm, measured. I can arrange transport to the clinic, he said. Appointments. Whatever you need. Just tell me. My lips parted. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to lean on him, to accept the help without thinking. But the words caught in my throat. Did I really need him? Or did I just want to feel like I wasn't falling apart inside? I'll manage. I said instead, short, tight, honest in the way a child insists they're fine even while shaking. He nodded again, slow, patient. All right, keep me updated. I swallowed. My fingers loosened. My legs stopped bouncing. The fan above me hummed, carrying some of the tension away. Outside, a car horn blared. Somewhere, someone laughed. I forced a small smile. I was safe. Yes, he had taken responsibility. But that feeling of being alone, the quiet, grinding, heavy alone, it stayed. Walking through campus corridors felt like crossing a minefield now. My bag weighed heavily on my shoulder, my stomach twisting in that slow, unfamiliar way. The sun had dipped, but the heat still pressed against my back through my thin blouse. Students passed in groups, voices overlapping, gossip trailing behind them like smoke. I smiled when I met my friends, but the laugh that escaped me sounded empty, like an echo in a tunnel. Can you imagine? She's already pregnant? One of them said, laughing about a girl from another year. Huh? Yeah, I replied. A faint smile, a neutral voice. My stomach tightened as the words left my mouth. I held myself together with everything I had, fighting not to let the world see me split open right there. I nodded along as they talked about boys, breakups, exams, weekend plans. My hand brushed my stomach without thinking, protective. Then I quickly moved it to fix my bag strap. I had to remember. Keep it down. Don't let anything show. The cafeteria smelled of fried chicken and beans, perfume mixed with sweat and hot air. I carried my tray to a corner table, choosing a place where no one would really look at me. I was careful not to draw attention, careful not to breathe too loudly or cough at the wrong time. Laughter burst from a nearby table, and I let out a small laugh too. Soft, polite, timed just right so it wouldn't seem strange. Just nod, laugh, no one can know, I whispered to myself. Classrooms were worse. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, chairs scraping the floor like they were scratching my nerves raw. Every whisper, every glance felt louder than it should. Like the whole room could somehow sense the secret inside me. My stomach twisted again. I pretended to focus on the lecture slides, pretended the numbers and words mattered. But my mind kept drifting. Nausea, the dull ache in my lower back, the tiny life inside me. Thabo in South Africa. He was calm, organizing appointments and budgets from far away, planning things without me even asking. But he wasn't here, and I was. Here in the heat, in the smells, in the noise that was supposed to feel normal, but didn't anymore. I brushed my hair behind my ear for the 4th time in 5 minutes, tugged at the hem of my blouse, shifted my weight trying to steady the shaking in my chest. My friends talked and laughed, sharing secrets I could no longer be part of. My old self. The girl who laughed too loudly, who stressed about lectures and assignments and campus gossip. She was slowly fading. I slipped into the library, pretending to study while my heart raced. Every page I turned, every note I scribbled felt like a cover. Don't let anyone notice. Don't let them see. Don't say anything. By the time classes ended, my stomach was knotted tight, my palms damp. I walked back to the hostel, each step heavy, glancing over my shoulder like I was expecting judgment or suspicion to follow me. Laughter and chatter floated behind me, far away and hollow. And I thought of Thabo, South Africa, his calm, careful voice. The plans he made without me asking. He was calm in South Africa, but he wasn't here. I didn't have him beside me. The next day, the lecture hall felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was pressing down on me. I shifted in my seat, my stomach fluttering and tightening at the same time. Just a little dizzy, I told myself. Everyone gets dizzy sometimes, but the room tilted slightly, and then the nausea came, sudden and strong. My palms went clammy. My lips dried out. Every signal from my body felt louder than it should. My heart jumped at a cough, a whisper, a chair scraping the floor. My stomach churned. I caught my reflection in the shiny metal edge of my notebook. My face looked pale, hair untidy, cheeks flushed under those harsh lights. My stomach was tight, fluttering. This wasn't random. This wasn't normal. I excused myself quietly, slipped past the rows of chairs, murmured bathroom, and prayed no one would ask questions. The hallway smelled of chalk dust and coffee from the cafe down the road. My stomach twisted again. I leaned against the cold sink, gripping the edges, rocking slightly, trying to convince myself I wasn't making a big deal out of nothing. Was I overreacting? Maybe it was stress. No. That wasn't it. My hands moved to my stomach, careful, almost shy, protective. I bent slightly, watching for signs, listening to what my body was telling me. The dizziness hadn't gone. The nausea stayed, stubborn, like it had settled in. Every wave of it carried urgency. If I tell anyone now, they'll look at me differently. I can't risk it yet, I whispered to my reflection, my heartbeat loud in my ears. I took slow breaths, counting in my head, willing the spinning to stop, the fluttering to calm down. I splashed water on my face. I could taste old coffee and that metallic bitterness nausea leaves behind. Tiny beads of sweat cooled on my skin in the air-conditioned corridor. I straightened slowly, wiped my hands on my skirt, and forced my face into something that looked like composure. When I went back into the lecture hall, I slid into my seat and pretended to listen. But my body kept reminding me that nothing was normal anymore. Every note felt heavy. My palms were still damp, my stomach tight, my eyes drifting toward the door in case I needed to escape again. Okay, it didn't get worse this time. But tomorrow, I would have to be more careful. I couldn't keep ignoring this. Later, I put my phone on speaker. The hostel fan hummed softly between my words and his. The mosquito net hung loose above me, laundry piled in crumpled heaps around the room. Life was still moving, even though mine felt paused. I scrolled through my notes again. Doctor appointments, transport plans, what I could afford and what I couldn't, trying to figure out how to ask my questions without sounding desperate. He was calm. Always calm, I thought, watching his office appear on the screen. Neat, controlled, light reflecting off polished surfaces. People moving quietly behind him, his staff, papers, phones, meetings, a world far removed from the tight, messy corners of my hostel room. His world wasn't mine, and I couldn't even step into it. I opened my mouth to ask him about the next prenatal checkup. Then someone spoke behind him. An assistant. Something about a meeting. Apologies moving fast in the background. Yes. Okay, I said. My voice came out small. Polite. I tried again, carefully. Talking about money, transport, how I would get to the clinic. But the phone picked up the soft tapping of a keyboard, papers shifting, and then his voice again, already halfway gone. Sorry, there's a meeting. Can we talk later? I swallowed. My hands twisted in my lap, stomach tightening as my fingers clenched the edge of my notes. I was tied to him. Money, doctors, plans, but shut out of everything else. I hadn't met anyone in his life. No family. No work people. Nothing. Just quick glimpses of doors closing behind him, staff passing quietly, voices I couldn't place. I wanted to reach through the screen, to step into his space, to feel something human, something close. But all I could do was wait, holding my words until the next interruption swallowed them. Each time he disappeared into another meeting, I felt smaller, like I was fading. I was part of this, but not really. My fingers tapped the desk, twisted into my sleeve, shifted my weight without settling. I bit my lip. The smell of damp clothes and leftover instant noodles filled the room, reminding me exactly where I was. My room. My limits. I glanced at the window. A car hooted faintly outside. Someone's music drifted through the wall. Life was moving. His life was moving. I was stuck somewhere in between. Yes, okay, I said again. The smile on my face felt stiff, like something pasted on. Inside, my chest tightened. I just wanted to explain the plan, but it felt like I was talking into a wall. And maybe I was. When the call ended, I stayed still. The phone felt cold in my hands. The silence settled around me, thick and heavy. He cared, but he wasn't really here. I was part of his plan, not his life. That evening, I went to Mama's house. The sunset light came through the curtains, turning the room gold and shadowed at the same time. I sat at the table with a fork in my hand, stomach tight, counting the seconds between bites, between words, between breaths. The smell of beans simmering and fried fish pressed into me, mixed with the faint perfume Mama always wore. Everything felt heavier tonight, like the walls had moved closer. "You're eating well, right?" Mama asked. Her eyes were sharp, watching me in that quiet way that always made my heart jump. I nodded, forcing a small smile, pushing food around my plate without tasting it. Yes, Mama," I said softly, carefully. Father spoke from his corner, his voice casual but heavy. Remember, responsibility is not cheap. His eyes held mine a second longer than necessary. I felt it immediately, an accusation without words. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I swallowed and nodded. "Yes, Father." I forced myself to look down at the food, to chew slowly, to keep my stomach calm. Eat slowly. Don't spill. Don't show anything. They didn't need to know yet. My fingers twisted the napkin until it was tight and warm. My leg bounced under the table. I kept my breath small and shallow. Fear and shame coiled tight inside my chest, pressing from the inside. Father made another comment, something light about planning for the future. Mama asked if I had rested during the day. I answered in short pieces, nods, soft words, careful pauses. I tried to keep my voice steady. Every time they looked at me, I felt myself shrinking, like their eyes alone could pull the truth out of me. Father kept watching me, like he already knew. God, I couldn't tell them. Not tonight. I focused on anything else, the way the sunset light bounced off the cutlery, the quiet clink of plates, the low hum of the neighbor's radio through the wall. Anything to stop my mind from running ahead to what would happen if they found out. Each time my stomach tightened, I swallowed the nausea down. Hid the shaking in my hands. Acted like nothing inside me was changing. Yes, but for how long could I keep pretending? How long before they sensed it? Thabo, if only you were here. The meal stretched on like an exam I hadn't studied for. Every pause felt like a question I couldn't answer. The shadows on the wall grew longer. The fork in my hand felt heavier with every minute. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, just to release the pressure crushing my chest. But I couldn't. When dinner finally ended, I pushed my plate back slowly, careful not to hold anyone's gaze too long. My hands were still trembling. I couldn't tell them tonight. But soon I would have to. And when I did, everything would break. My hands were clenched so tight around the napkin I could feel the rough cloth biting into my palms. My stomach twisted again. Every breath sounded too loud in the sudden quiet. I had practiced the words 100 times in my head. Still, they felt impossible. Heavy, dangerous. Say it, don't say it, just say it. I'm pregnant, I said. The words came out barely above a whisper. Silence dropped over the room, thick and suffocating. Mama froze with her fork halfway to her mouth, eyes wide, her face twisting between disbelief and anger. Father's stare hardened, sharp and crushing, pressing down on me. Somewhere behind me, my siblings whispered, small voices filled with fear and curiosity. I shrank where I sat, wishing I could disappear into the floor. How could you let this happen? Mama's voice cut through the room, sharp, shaking. Anger tangled with disappointment. My hands trembled under the table, squeezing the napkin until it twisted tight. My shoulders folded inward. I rocked slightly, trying to make myself smaller, quieter. Who is the man? Father's words landed clean and hard, like a blade. He leaned back in his chair, stiff, waiting for my answer the way a judge waits for a confession. I wanted to fold into myself, to disappear completely. Oh God, I had done this, and I couldn't undo it. They were disappointed, and I felt so small. I swallowed against the panic climbing up my throat, tried to steady my voice. I don't know. I'm sorry. My voice cracked. I swallowed again, eyes dropping to the floor. Grandma's absence pressed against me like a ghostly hand. Grandma, why weren't you here to tell me it would be okay? Mama sucked in a sharp breath. Father said nothing. The flickering shadows on the wall crept closer. My stomach tightened. My palms were damp. The napkin lay crumpled in my fist. I heard my heartbeat loud in my ears, thudding with guilt and fear. I tried to speak again, slower this time. Careful. I didn't plan for this to happen. I don't know what to do. They stared. Then they spoke in low voices, arguing, blaming, asking questions that blurred together. I stayed still, trying to hold myself together, rocking gently, biting the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't cry. Every unspoken word felt heavy on my chest. I could feel myself slipping, no longer the daughter they could guide or control, just a pregnant girl. When I finally stood and went to my room, the air felt thick, almost choking. I closed the door behind me, let it click shut, a thin wall between me and the storm outside. They were angry. They didn't know who to blame, and I was still alone. Tomorrow, I would have to face them again, and I didn't know if I was strong enough. Moonlight spilled across my room, pale and quiet, laying silver lines on the floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, knees pulled tight to my chest, rocking gently like I could keep myself from falling apart this way. My fingers clutched Grandma's old shawl, the one she used to cover me with when I slept as a child. It still smelled faintly of soap and clean cloth, with a hint of old flowers. A small piece of a life that felt very far away. "Grandma, I wish you were here." My whisper barely lifted from my lips, but it was enough for me to hear it, to feel it settle in my chest. She always knew what to say, even when I had messed up, even when I was stubborn or afraid. Now there was only silence. Only me. I traced the edges of her folded clothes, picturing her soft voice telling me it would be all right, that mistakes could be corrected, that life could still bend toward hope, even when everything looked broken. But there was no one, no low hum of understanding, no gentle hand rubbing my back while I struggled to stay standing in a world that had suddenly grown too heavy. Mama and Father had eyes that judged, voices that commanded. Thabo, he was far away, calm, collected, lost inside his ordered life. And me? I was alone with my thoughts, my belly tightening at the thought of what I carried, at the weight of responsibility sitting on my shoulders like stones. I picked up my journal. My hands shook a little as I wrote. The words spilled out, things I hadn't dared say out loud to anyone else. I have to be strong, but I can't do this alone. No one understands like you would. Grandma, I'm scared. I stood and paced slowly, bare feet against the cool floor. The shawl slipped from my hands and rested against my chest. Each step echoed softly in the room, counting time for me, marking the long hours I had to survive until morning. I whispered again, barely breathing the words into the air. No one, just me, alone. Eventually, I curled under the thin blanket, hugging my knees tight. My eyes followed the moonlight as it crept across the floor. My breaths came shallow and uneven, like the night itself was pressing down on me. Tomorrow, I would have to face everyone again. But tonight, it was just me. And I couldn't stop the thought rising again and again. What if I fail? And for the first time since I found out, I let the ache of missing her settle fully inside me. Raw. Untouched. A weight I had no one to lift. The next day was the same, but I managed to leave Mama's house and go see the new apartment. Yes. He insisted I get one. For my safety and the baby's, he said. Sunlight poured through the wide windows, washing the room in a warm, almost forgiving glow. But it did nothing to loosen the knot in my chest. The place was brighter than my hostel room, yes. But dust clung to the corners, and the sharp smell of cleaning liquid reminded me how much work waited here, how little I could handle on my own. Grace arrived first. Her eyes swept the room immediately, that familiar mix of concern and judgment settling on her face. "You can't do everything by yourself, you know?" she said. Her voice was sharp, but not cruel, like a slap softened with sugar. Heat rushed to my face. I wanted to shrink, to melt into the shadows near the window. My hands twisted nervously at the strings of my apron, shoulders stiff and tight. Then Ruth came. She didn't say anything. She just moved around the kitchen, picking up plates, wiping the counter, arranging the cushions. Quiet, steady, her presence filled the room without noise. I followed behind her slowly, dragging my bags across the floor, wishing it could just open up and swallow me. I couldn't believe I needed help. I should have been fine. But look at me, dragging bags like a child. My stomach tightened at how exposed I felt, how much of myself they could see. The part that couldn't cope alone. The part that was tired, raw, embarrassed. Grace shot me a sharp look when I fumbled with a box of kitchen things. "Be careful. Don't drop it," she snapped. I nodded fast, murmuring, "Yes, sorry." Then Ruth rested her hand on my arm. "Sit. I'll help," she said softly, almost like a promise. I finally let out a small breath. I put the bags down, my fingers still shaking. "Thank you. I can't manage alone," I whispered. My voice came out small. Careful. I hated how weak it sounded. I hated needing help. Yet I needed it. Why did that feel like failure? I watched them slowly bring the apartment to life. Grace's strict efficiency brushing up against Ruth's quiet support. Shame and relief twisted together in my chest until I couldn't tell them apart. We spent the next hours running errands, washing plates, sweeping, putting things in place. I moved slowly, carefully, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of giving them another reason to judge me. Grace gave instructions now and then. Ruth stayed beside me without saying much. I kept my voice steady, smiling faintly when I had to, nodding politely. Inside, my head spun with gratitude and humiliation, both heavy, both real. By the time we sat down with cups of lukewarm tea, most of the work done, I felt this strange mix of relief and exposure. They were there. They were helping. And still, did anyone really see me, the real me inside all this? I held the cup between my palms, letting the warmth sink into my fingers. They were here, helping, but the feeling of being exposed wouldn't leave. Did anyone really see me? Or only the version I was trying so hard to hold together? We went back to the hostel. The room felt smaller than usual that night. The lamp flickered on the bedside table, throwing restless shadows over my half-packed bags and rumpled sheets. Outside, Boda Boda engines buzzed, voices floated through the thin walls, and the stale smell of yesterday's instant noodles clung to the air. I paced the room, twisting my hair until my scalp hurt, my heart pounding like it wanted to escape. I couldn't fail. But where did I even begin? I pulled my notebook closer, but the pen felt heavy in my fingers. The page just stared back at me, blank, stubborn, like it was daring me to be honest. I started writing anyway. Messy lines, broken sentences, words that didn't even come close to the storm sitting inside my chest. I wanted so much. Now what will I have? The thought kept circling my head, slow and cruel. My studies, my plans, the small future I thought I was building with my own hands, all of it slipping away. I pictured myself a year from now. No backpack, no lectures, just tired eyes, a body worn down, whispers following me wherever I went. People talking, always talking. And Thabo, would he even notice if I struggled? If I fell behind? If I became someone he didn't recognize anymore? I lay back and stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks, following the thin line of moonlight crawling across the floor. I was supposed to be in control of my life. But instead, I felt like I was floating, loose, with nothing to hold on to. I chewed on the end of the pen, then froze mid-step as I paced. My stomach twisted. My palms were damp. Should I call someone? Message a friend? Check if Thabo had texted? Or should I just sit there and let the panic roll over me, heavy and unstoppable? I couldn't tell anyone everything. Not yet. Not Mama. Not my friends. Not even Thabo. Not fully. I bent over the notebook again, writing faster now, my hand struggling to keep up with my thoughts. Each line felt like a confession I couldn't say out loud. Like I was trying to force a plan onto the page when I had none. I imagined the future stretching ahead of me like a long, hard road. Every step full of shame, gossip, money problems, judgment. Every option felt wrong. But doing nothing felt worse. The pen pressed harder into the paper than I meant, ink bleeding out in small, angry blots. My eyes drifted to the shadows moving along the wall. I wanted to scream, to hit something, to do anything that proved I wasn't stuck. But my body wouldn't move. I felt locked in place. I just needed a plan. The night closed in around me, quiet, heavy, unforgiving. My breathing came uneven. My stomach stayed tight. Outside, I could hear the faint noise of the street, metal clanging somewhere, life still moving on. And buried in that sound was tomorrow, waiting. I finally put the pen down. My hands were shaking. My chest ached like something was sitting on it. I stared at the ceiling again. I had to figure this out. But what if I couldn't? And in that silence, I felt it clearly. The future, heavy and unmoving, standing in front of me, waiting for me to trip. Next day, campus felt noisy. Music was blasting from phones, students laughing in groups, and the smell of frying samosas and coffee hanging in the air. Thick, oily. I walked through it, my stomach tightening. I used to love that smell. The noise. The heat and chatter that made campus feel alive. Now it only made me tense. Empty. Why did everything I used to love suddenly feel wrong? Even the music felt too loud, too forced. I tried to smile at a friend waving from the cafeteria. I forced a small laugh at a joke, but it didn't settle in me. My chest felt heavy just trying. Their voices sounded far away, like I was listening from underwater, and I couldn't reach the happiness I used to have. I watched other students gathered together, faces bright, carefree, laughing without fear. I felt a wall between me and them, thick but unseen. Like I was on the outside now. My bag strap dug into my shoulder and I pulled at it, nervous. My stomach clenched, reminding me that nothing was simple anymore. Why did they look so free, so normal, while I felt trapped inside my own body? Even the books in my hands felt strange. I used to enjoy turning pages, sitting quietly in the library, that calm hum around me. Now the words blurred. They meant nothing. Every corridor felt heavy with responsibilities I never asked for. Every small thing, the sun on my skin, friends talking nearby, the smell of food frying, felt like a reminder of what I was losing, of the life I might never get back. Daniel came closer, smiling. "Why are you so quiet today?" "Tired." I said softly, not really looking at her. "Tired." Yes. That was easier. They didn't need to know it was everything else, too. I sat on a bench, watching students scrolling on their phones, sharing stories. Their laughter irritated me, but I couldn't stop listening. I wanted normal. I wanted easy. But my body, my life, my thoughts, everything had shifted, and I didn't recognize myself anymore. I couldn't even enjoy small things now. Was this how it would always be? The afternoon dragged on. Sunlight spread over the brick paths, the benches, the students. Over me, too. I walked back to the hostel slowly. My steps felt heavy, my stomach tight, my heart even heavier. Every familiar sight, every smell, every laugh, things that once comforted me, now felt like quiet accusations. I couldn't enjoy anything. Nothing felt like it belonged to me anymore. How was I supposed to survive this and still remain myself? I pulled my bag closer to my body, swallowed the lump in my throat, kept walking, wondering if anyone could see the crack inside me. The part of me slipping away day by day. In the next few days, I stood there frozen, boxes half packed, dust sticking to my fingers, my heart beating too fast, my stomach tight. The harsh ceiling light in the apartment made every corner feel sharp, exposed. Every shadow felt like it was watching me, accusing me. My phone buzzed again. Thabo, calm, steady, his face filling the screen like everything was under control. "Stay there," he said. "Better apartment, health, safety. I'll handle everything else." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, trying to sound normal, capable. "Okay." Then there was a knock at the door. Hard, insistent. My chest dropped. "Mama?" She stepped inside without waiting, eyes sharp, arms crossed. She smelled faintly of soap and authority, the way she always did when she had already decided. "Come home now. I want you home," she said, voice clipped. "Don't argue, AMINA." I stood there, stuck between the phone in my hand and the doorway, forcing my lungs to work. "I can't do this. I can't choose both. Why now? Why like this?" "Mama," I whispered. The word barely survived the room. I can't. Please." Her eyes narrowed. "You're abandoning your family duties. This apartment, this distance, it's too much. You need to come home." Thabo's voice came through the phone again. Calm, firm. "No. She stays. I've prepared everything here. She's safe here. I'll handle the rest." The walls felt like they were closing in. Dust floated in the harsh light, tiny specks moving slowly, like they were judging me. I tugged at my hair, pacing between half-packed boxes, my hands brushing dusty edges. My stomach clenched hard. Mama thought I was abandoning her. Thabo thought I couldn't manage without him. What was I supposed to do? I lifted a box, then stopped halfway. Maybe if I did a little for each of them. No, that wasn't possible. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. I shifted another box, straightened some papers, moved a chair, trying to measure my obedience, trying to split myself into pieces that didn't exist. Thabo's calm voice on the phone, Mama's sharp glare in the room, both pressing down on me until all I felt was tired. "If I stay," I whispered to myself, barely audible, "at least the apartment is safe, but Mama will never forgive me." Mama's foot tapped on the floor, impatient. Thabo's voice insisted again, controlled, clipped. I picked up another box, shuffled papers, fixed the chair again, anything to keep the pressure from crushing me. Every small decision felt like a fight. Every movement was just survival. Why did I have to be the bridge? Why couldn't they see how tired I was? I set the last box down for now and let my arms fall to my sides. My breathing was shallow, my muscles stayed tight, my stomach was knotted, my thoughts spun in circles, half-packed boxes, half-said words, half-hearted obedience. It felt like no matter what I did, it would never be enough. I can't do this forever. I whispered to myself, low, tired, almost swallowed by the mess around me. But right now, I have to keep going. Who even cares what I want? For a moment, I just sat there, surrounded by dust, boxes, and the wide, painful gap between two worlds I couldn't join together. I wondered if surviving meant slowly losing myself in the process. That night, I went back to the hostel. The next morning came quickly. I had to move out that day. Sunlight spilled into the narrow corridor, bright enough to expose every scuff mark on the sticky floor. I pulled at the zipper of my last suitcase, my stomach twisting under the weight of both the luggage and the shame sitting inside me. Every box I had stacked the night before suddenly felt heavier, like the hostel itself was trying to hold me back. Whispers drifted from the doorway. I froze. My fingers tightened around the suitcase handle. Everyone is staring. They all know. Just finish this. Just get out. Leaving already? A neighbor asked. Casual. Curious in a way that cut. I forced a small nod. Yes. Just moving. The smile I gave felt thin. Empty. Stretched over nerves and nausea. I dragged the suitcase toward the stairwell, careful not to trip over the damp carpet or the stubborn fold in the rug. Each step echoed down the narrow corridor, loud and exposed, like a drum beating out my embarrassment. The administrative office smelled of bleach and paper. The staff barely looked up from their forms and stamps, untouched by the storm inside me. I signed the exit papers quickly, trying to keep my hands steady. The clipboard pressed into my palm felt heavy, like judgment. Boxes and bags clattered behind me as I struggled to fit the last of my things into the small elevator. Students passed by, staring, some with polite curiosity, others with whispers sharp enough to hurt more than anything Mama had said. I kept my head down, tugging at my hair, my lips pressed tight. I wished I could disappear, or at least become invisible. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit my face like an accusation. The city moved on as usual, boda-bodas roaring past, voices overlapping, the smell of frying samosas from a nearby vendor. But none of it felt like it belonged to me anymore. This hostel had been my small world, my routine, my idea of normal. Now it felt like a place of judgment and exposure, a reminder that everything familiar was slipping through my fingers. I stopped at the gate. My hands trembled on the suitcase handles. I took one last look at the building, where I had laughed quietly, cried silently, and lived the ordinary student life I once had. I was leaving everything behind, even the small comfort of routine. This was it. No turning back. I hoped the new place would work. I hoped I could manage without looking weak. And with that, I stepped forward into a future I had prepared for only in my head, never in real life. The suitcase dragged behind me, scraping the ground. Shame weighed more than anything inside it. Every step felt like a clean break from the life I used to know. I stood at the doorway of the new apartment and just paused. Sunlight spilled across the polished floor, bounced off the bare walls, and left me feeling strangely empty. There was a kind of pride there, because technically, this place was mine, but nothing really felt like it belonged to me. Not yet. Boxes were stacked carelessly. Sheets lay folded on a chair, stiff and unused. Quiet reminders of a life I used to run on my own. My phone buzzed. A message from Ruth. I'm on my way. Don't try lifting everything, okay? Don't try. Like she already knew me. Like she knew I would pretend I was fine until my hands were shaking, until I was standing by the stove struggling with a pot I couldn't carry. When she arrived, she brought this calm with her. Practical. Steady. She picked up a box heavier than anything I wanted to admit, lifted it easily, and set it on the counter. I hovered nearby, hands restless, wanting to help, but not wanting to confess that I couldn't. I can manage, I started, my voice tight. Not today, she said, cutting me off gently as she slid plates into the cupboard. Let me. I hated how my chest twisted at that. Hated the feeling of helplessness, the way my stomach tightened when I let her take over, even a little. But there was relief too. Quiet relief. Because I wasn't completely alone. I carried a small basket of spices from one counter to the other, pretending it was enough. My fingers brushed the cardboard, rough, familiar, and I thought about how much I used to do by myself, how easy it all felt then. Now every small thing I couldn't manage felt like proof that I had changed. Careful with that, she said as she set down a pot. You'll hurt your back. I murmured thanks and didn't argue. Back, stomach, arms, Everything ached from the pregnancy, from moving, from carrying things no one could see. We worked in a quiet rhythm, boxes shifting, plates stacking, sheets shaken out and tucked in. I passed her small things, a towel, a mug, a pan, and she arranged them carefully, like she was setting up a life that wasn't fully hers. A life for someone who couldn't quite do everything alone anymore. I kept looking at her, the way she moved so easily, the way everything seemed simple in her hands. My chest twisted with two feelings at once, pride and irritation. I hated needing help. I should have been able to do this by myself. I told myself I could, but the truth was sitting right there with me. I couldn't. By the time the sun started dipping behind the building, the apartment looked like a place someone could live in. Not mine yet. Not completely. But it was livable, functional, safe, and maybe that was enough for now. When she finally set down the last box and smiled like she'd won a small battle, I managed a tight, tired smile. Thank you. I really can't manage alone. She brushed it off, already reaching for her bag. I watched her leave, and the silence rushed in fast. Too fast. The only sound left was the low hum of traffic from the road below. I stood there, looking at the corners still not unpacked, at the light sliding slowly across the floor, at a space that belonged to me but didn't feel like mine. And that familiar sinking feeling settled in again. I had survived the move, but surviving didn't mean I had found my footing. Tomorrow I would face everything alone again. The next morning, I woke up, brushed my teeth, and didn't go to class. I sank into the sofa instead, letting the cushions hold me a little, and my phone lit up again. Messages from Thabo, bills paid, groceries ordered, baby things already on the way. One message after another, confirmations stacking up, quiet reminders that I didn't need to lift a finger. I stared at the screen, my stomach tight, my chest tight too. And underneath the relief, there was something else. Shame. Maybe envy. Maybe both. He was calm, organized, every message neat and controlled, like he had everything handled. And me, I was just here, watching it all happen. I picked up my mug. The coffee inside was cold. I took a sip anyway, pretending I could taste it. My fingers tapped the screen without thinking, hovering, wanting to do something, anything practical. But there was nothing to do. Not for the bills, not for food, not even for the apartment. The doorbell buzzed. Delivery. I stood slowly, steadying myself when the room tilted just a little. I opened the door and accepted the bags. Thank you. That's fine, I said, keeping my voice polite and even. My hands shook as I took them. I hoped he didn't notice. Back inside, I set the groceries on the counter. My eyes drifted to the small pile of envelopes already there. Water, electricity, internet. All settled. All handled. Long before I had even thought about them. And I stood there in the quiet kitchen, realizing how strange it felt to be taken care of, and how small it made me feel at the same time. It was easier for him. Not for me. Every small thing felt heavier than it should have. Lifting a bag of flour, shifting a few cans, my body kept reminding me that I couldn't just exist the way I used to, that I was tethered, dependent, carrying more than my hands could manage. I knew I was supposed to feel only gratitude, and I did. Truly, I was grateful. But there was a small, bitter twist in my chest that wouldn't loosen its grip. Was this care? Or control? A quiet tether dressed up as support? I sat back down, letting the weight of the day settle into me. The city moved outside the window, distant and alive, while I stayed still. Anchored by Thabo's invisible hands. Hands I couldn't see, but felt in every task he'd already taken care of for me. I traced a finger along the edge of the counter. Cool. Solid. Grounding. I thought about how different this life was from everything I'd known, from walking to the shop on my own, from carrying my own burdens, from being the one in charge of my days. I lifted the mug again. The coffee was cold now, bitter. It suited my mood, and I whispered it to the empty room because it was the truth I couldn't ignore. He's doing everything, and I'm just here, watching. Is this love or just logistics? I felt him before I saw him. Heavy footsteps outside the apartment. Deliberate. Familiar in a way my body recognized before my mind caught up. My chest tightened instantly. My stomach clenched, sharp and instinctive. I froze where I was, fingers locking together in my lap, as if staying still, staying quiet, might somehow make this moment pass. The knock came hard. Not asking. Telling. I didn't answer fast enough. The door opened anyway. The smell hit first. His aftershave, thick and sharp, tangled with the faint smoke of last night's firewood still clinging to his jacket. It filled the room immediately, overpowered the weak trace of my perfume, took over my space. He stepped inside like the apartment belonged to him, like I still belonged to him. I didn't stand. I couldn't. My body refused to move. He looked around once, slow, measuring, taking in the couch, the lamp, the bed, just beyond the doorway. This place, the place I had chosen, the place I had refused to leave. Proof that I had picked something, someone else. Then he spoke. His voice was low, controlled, dangerous in the way I knew too well, the calm that always came before the storm. I have lost my daughter. You are pregnant. For a man I don't know, and you refuse to come home. A pause. Sharp. You should have at least finished something. Where is your life now? Each sentence landed on its own. Separate. Clean. Like accusations being read out loud. My throat tightened. I pressed my palms down over my lap, over my stomach, as if holding it could somehow protect everything inside me, as if my hands could keep the world from touching what mattered most. Then his voice rose, sharp, broken at the edges, cutting through the room. I will kill him if I meet him. The words struck me hard. I flinched without thinking. My shoulders folded inward, like my body shrinking on itself the way it always used to. Instinct. Old fear. I dropped my eyes to the floor, to the tiles, started counting the cracks, like numbers could keep me steady. Papa, please. My voice came out weak, almost nothing. I'm begging you. He slammed his hand on the table. Plates rattled, clanged together. One slid too close to the edge. The sound tore through me. I jerked again, heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it beating in my chest. He leaned forward, looming over the table. The veins in his neck stood out. His jaw was tight, locked. Anger sat on him heavy and thick, like heat you feel even before you touch fire. You think I will just sit? He demanded. You think I will accept this shame? My thoughts ran in tight, frantic circles. He doesn't know Thabo. He's never met him. All he knows is that I'm pregnant, I've left, and I'm no longer obeying. Please don't act. Please don't go looking for him. Please don't hurt him. I tried. I really tried. Thabo hasn't. My voice cracked and broke completely. The words died in my throat. I stopped. Any explanation felt pointless, almost disrespectful in front of his rage. Words had never protected me here. They never had power. The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing closer. The light through the window had shifted, throwing long shadows that made him look larger, heavier, impossible to stand up to. A storm wearing a face I knew too well. He began to pace, back and forth, heavy footsteps thudding against the floor. Each time he turned toward me, my stomach twisted tighter, pulling in on itself, as if my body was trying to disappear before his anger landed again. I imagined it then. What if he actually found Thabo? What if this anger followed him across borders, across distance, into that clean, polished life I only knew through a phone screen? Panic rose fast and hot in my chest. I would never forgive myself. I couldn't. I couldn't lose everything because of this. He stopped pacing and looked straight at me. His eyes were sharp, cutting. I folded even more into myself. My hands clenched so tight my fingers started to hurt. I have to keep him safe. But how? He's far away, and I'm stuck here. A plate made a soft clinking sound as it finally settled back on the table. I flinched again. My father kept staring at me, long and heavy, like he was weighing something in his mind. For a brief second, I wondered if he could actually see me. The fear, the tiredness, the girl barely holding herself together. But I knew better. In that moment, I wasn't a person. I was a problem, a disgrace, a failure that needed to be fixed. I stayed hunched over, quiet, shaking, letting the storm pass over me without daring to move. Eventually, he left, his footsteps fading the same way they had come, heavy, unresolved. That morning stayed stuck in my chest the whole day. And now at night, sitting cross-legged on my bed with the lamp glowing softly and my journal open, I felt the aftershocks more than the fear itself. My pen moved slowly. My body felt tired in a deep way, the kind that sits in your bones. I read Thabo's message again. Calm, straight, everything arranged, everything handled. I survived today, I wrote, but it feels like I did it alone. My hand rested for a moment on my stomach, a small pressure, something real. He is here, I admitted quietly. And I am still alone inside this. Thabo would keep things running. He would fix what needed fixing. He would be present in structure, in money sent, in calls answered. But warmth? That was never part of it. I stared at the lamp, at the soft shadows moving against the wall, and I accepted the shape my life was taking. I can't expect warmth, only presence. I closed the journal, reached for my phone, then stopped. The screen stayed dark. He is here. I can depend on him to keep things moving. I breathed out slowly, holding myself steady, but everything else, I would have to carry on my own. That evening, he called. The call connected and his face filled the screen. Calm, controlled, the way he always was. Behind him I could see it clearly. Polished floors, expensive furniture, a vase of flowers placed so perfectly it didn't look real. Just out of focus, hands moved, files being passed, a pen set down, someone clearing a tray. They didn't speak to me, not directly, but I felt them. I felt the eyes. I shifted on my chair, fingers pulling nervously at the hem of my shirt. My stomach tightened. I suddenly felt very small, too aware of my bump, of my body, of my voice, already trembling before I even spoke. The apartment I was in, my small refuge, felt cramped in comparison. It smelled faintly of coffee and incense. Sunlight slipped through thin curtains, making dust float in the air like tiny intruders. The difference between our worlds felt sharp, almost cruel. They're there, even if they don't say anything. They're watching, I thought, biting my lip. My voice came out soft, careful. Yes, okay, I understand. Thabo didn't react. He never did. Calm, ordered, efficient. In the background, a hand moved again. Maybe a servant, maybe an assistant, maybe both. Adjusting something on a shelf, glancing in his direction, waiting for instructions I couldn't hear but somehow felt. I looked down at my own hands, fidgeting, shaking slightly, holding the phone like it was both my lifeline and my leash. I was tethered. I could see his world, the smooth surfaces, the quiet hum of air conditioning, the faint suggestion of expensive perfume. Everything neat, everything controlled. I noticed every detail without trying. And me? I was just a face on a screen. How did I even fit into this life? My stomach knotted tighter. My throat went dry. Even through the phone, I felt measured. My smallness, my dependence, my weakness made bigger by the distance. I nodded, forced a small, careful smile. Every movement restrained, every word chosen. I'll manage. Thank you. Polite, functional, nothing extra. The thought struck me hard. I couldn't afford to mess up. I couldn't let the fear show. A hand brushed past a glossy table behind him. Soft footsteps. The faint hum of a South African city beyond the walls. I imagined their thoughts, their quiet judgments. Even unseen, I felt weighed. Then the call ended. His face vanished. The screen went dark. My room fell silent again. Only distant traffic outside, reminding me how small my world really was. Messy, imperfect, tied to something far away. I leaned back, my voice barely a whisper to the empty room. I'm tethered to him, close enough to see his world, too far to touch it. I'm present, but invisible. And I wondered how long it would take before I truly belonged anywhere. Next morning, I was just stacking some papers on the small table when it hit me. The room tilted. My sight spun. Sunlight cut through the thin curtains in sharp lines like knives, and for a second I couldn't tell whether the floor was moving or I was. My stomach turned hard. Bile climbed up my throat. My heart beat so loud I could hear it inside my ears. I grabbed the edge of the table, knuckles tight, white. Tried to steady myself. No, 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 no. Not now. Not like this. Not when I was alone. My legs shook, knees weakened. I lowered myself slowly onto the bed, curling inward without thinking. My body trembled. The sheets felt damp against my palms. Every breath came short, shallow, like my lungs were forgetting how to work. I reached for my phone, clumsy because my hands wouldn't obey me. I dialed without really looking. The screen lit my face. Thabo, I feel dizzy. Can you come? My voice broke into pieces, thin, unsteady. My mouth tasted like metal. Fear and anxiety tangled tight in my chest. Stay seated. I'm sending someone, his voice came through. Calm. Measured, always calm, too calm for what was happening inside me. My stomach twisted harder. I clutched it and whispered, please, just answer. I can't do this alone. Everything felt wrong. The papers, the prenatal vitamins on the table, the small cluttered space around me. Even the faint hum of traffic outside sounded distant, almost mocking. My head pounded. Sweat gathered on my forehead, making my hair stick to my skin. I thought about calling someone else, a friend, anyone. But shame froze me in place. Alone was all I could be. Alone in the panic. alone in the fear. I closed my eyes and curled tighter, trying to stop the spinning. What if something was wrong with the baby? The thought locked me in place. My fingers dug into the sheets. My whole body shook. The seconds stretched out, slow and heavy, like the air itself was pressing on my chest. Thabo, I can't. It's too much. I gasped, breaths rattling in and out of me. Even as he gave Ave instructions, even as I heard that someone was on the way, I knew it. He wasn't here. He was doing things, moving things, handling things, but he wasn't here. I was still alone in it. The sweat cooled slightly on my arms, but my stomach stayed knotted. My chest felt tight and sore. I whispered to no one. I need him. Now. But he was far. Calm. Capable. And I was shaking. Tethered. Helpless. Time dragged on, heartbeat by heartbeat. The apartment stayed quiet. Too quiet. And I felt small. Fragile. Too aware of how alone I really was. The knock came softly. Controlled. Almost polite. Still, my stomach clenched at the sound. I had been sitting on the edge of the bed, hands twisted around my phone cord, staring at the dull light filtering through the curtains. When I opened the door, I met a calm voice, a gentle nod, a professional face. Someone Thabo had sent. Someone who knew what they were doing. Relief washed through me in a rush, and still, the emptiness stayed. Hi, thank you, I murmured, forcing my voice to stay steady, pretending I was fine. My stomach still ached. My body still trembled slightly from the earlier panic. Sweat cooled in patches along my arms. The helper guided me to sit, checked my vitals, asked questions. Everything done neatly, efficiently. No hesitation, no uncertainty. Each step handled like routine. I called Thabo again. Video this time. Not because I expected comfort, he wouldn't give that, but because I needed to see him, needed proof that his world had reached across distance and tied itself to mine. Yes, okay, I understand, I said, nodding at the screen. Careful not to let my voice shake. He spoke calmly, clearly, arranging appointments, giving instructions, organizing deliveries. His hands moved quickly, deliberately, not like everything was already under control. Nothing soft, nothing warm, just action, just competence. I watched him on the screen, grateful, truly grateful. The panic was easing. The dizziness had settled. The baby seemed okay, and yet that hollow twist stayed in my chest. He fixed everything so fast I hadn't even finished asking, faster than my fear could fully form. And still, I was here, sitting alone in my small apartment, my stomach tight, my hands restless, my heart still pounding from a fear that hadn't completely released me. I wanted to reach through the screen, to touch warmth, to hear reassurance, anything beyond the clean, careful precision of his care. But there was nothing like that, no hand reaching out, no soft word, no pause just for me. Everything had been handled, but without closeness, without being seen as anything more than a problem to solve. I breathed slowly, forcing calm into my body. Thank you, I'll wait here, I said quietly. My voice small, careful. Inside, the truth whispered louder than my mouth ever could. He fixed it. But I am still invisible. He was in South Africa, and I was in Uganda, holding this fear alone. The helper left not long after. The door closed softly behind them, and the room fell quiet again. Just the ceiling fan humming, just traffic murmuring somewhere far outside. Everything was fine now. The panic, the fear, it had passed. And yet, the space inside me felt wide and empty. I was tethered to his life, not living inside it. How was I supposed to survive in this space between presence and warmth? The thought stayed with me as I stared down at my hands resting in my lap. Relief and frustration knotted together until I couldn't tell them apart. Heavy, familiar, alone again. Always. That night, the room felt heavier than usual. The street outside hummed softly. The lamp glowed low. Shadows stretched along the walls, slow and watchful. I sat cross-legged on the bed with my notebook open on my lap, pen hovering above the page. I didn't know if I wanted to write or just sit there and breathe. My stomach twitched, a dull reminder of the morning, the dizziness, the fear, how helpless I had felt. I reread Thabo's message, short, exact, calm. No softness, no worry that spilled over, no hand reaching through the distance to touch mine. Just facts. Someone would come. Everything was arranged. I would be fine. I swallowed, my throat dry, and whispered into the quiet room, "He is here." And I am still alone inside this. I tried to balance the relief with the loneliness. My fingers traced the edge of the notebook, rolled the pen between my palms, felt the sheet beneath me. I had survived this week. I had managed. I had stayed upright even when the world spun. And still, it felt like I had done it alone. I began to write slowly, carefully, each line a quiet confession. I can't expect warmth, only presence. That was the truth I was learning to live with. Thabo would fix what needed fixing, make sure I was safe, make sure things ran smoothly. But he wouldn't step into this quiet, aching place inside me where fear and longing lived. I was tethered to him, his money, his structure, his solutions, but not to the part of him that could soften my panic. Hold my shaking hand. Tell me I wasn't alone. I paused and looked at the lamp. The shadows moved gently with the flicker of the bulb. I am tethered, and I am alone. But I will survive this. The pen slipped from my fingers onto the notebook. My hand rested over my stomach, light and unsure, like I was reassuring myself more than anyone else. The night wrapped around me. The apartment was small. The bedspread creased. My phone lay just out of reach. I glanced at it once more, half expecting another message. The screen stayed dark, calm, distant, like the space between us. I closed the journal and exhaled slowly. He is here. I can rely on him to keep things moving, but I will have to hold myself through everything else. The thought settled in me, heavy but steady. I didn't cry. I didn't fight it. I simply accepted the weight, the quiet, the tether that kept me alive but never close. Tomorrow would come. I would wake up, face the small apartment, the prenatal vitamins, the city sounds drifting through my window, and I would do it alone, tethered to a man who was capable, reliable, but distant in the way my heart needed most. And for now, that would have to be enough.